The Brandon Peters Show may contain explicit language and detailed plot points. For more information on the show, stay tuned to the end of the episode.
The summer of 2004 at 20.
Welcome back to the Brandon Peters Show and the summer of 2004 at 20. A weekend by weekend look at the movies released that year and the pop culture that surround them. Joining me as always from Puck News and the Outside Scoop, which this week is the Manchurian Candidate.
Oh, fuck yes, but now I want that.
A cherry scoop concoction with some dates in there for good measure. It's Scott Mendelson.
That's one of the first flavors that, like, oh, fuck, I want that.
There we go.
Hi, good to be here. Always a pleasure. Yada, yada, yada.
All right. And also we have from We Live Entertainment and Out Now with Aaron and Abe. He's out there looking for burgers. Yeah, fur burgers. Aaron Neuwirth.
Hope they're Washington cherries.
There we go. How are you, Aaron?
I'm great. This is a big week. You know why?
Why?
I'm wearing shorts finally. It's hot enough.
There we go. Okay. Yeah.
It's warmer outside.
Very, very much so. We're rounding the corner from July into our final month as August, as we cover July 30 through August 1st this week. Getting them legs titles out there to drop and play through August, right, Scott? That's how it works, right?
Yeah, sometimes. Unless you're a remake of The Crow.
You can't talk about things that haven't happened yet, Scott.
Time to take her home. Her dizzy head.
Future.
It's conscience laden. All right.
The Crow 30th anniversary screening is going to go super well, and like a month from then, they're going to be like, "Yes, finally, Bill's
even
Nosferatu himself
and
is coming
Reddit
in to save the
me.
summer."
But even on Reddit, they had them on their box office. They're like, "Fuck, Scott called that 4 years ago," and they have my Forbes article excerpt on there.
I think everybody called The Crow remake.
No, Furiosa.
Oh,
Sorry.
Furiosa.
I skipped the, yeah.
Okay. Oh, but Furiosa's been out for a while now once this is dropped. So that's old
it hasn't
news.
become the next Elemental and legged out to 160 million?
We don't know.
That's what happened.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But yeah.
Obviously, that would be great, but
speaking of old news, let's check out our news from 2004.
And I found a reason for you. And the reason is news.
Start with an eagle was great, so I was like, okay, that's perfect. And then to go on and hold my second shot for a double eagle was just, well, I couldn't really believe it happened, because those things don't really, I mean, do they happen? I mean, they did, but I couldn't believe it. And so then the next thing, the key was just to try and keep playing and try and keep my head, and I was really excited. It was just amazing.
All right, on July 29th, Marco van Basten is named the manager of the Netherlands national team. Congrats, Marco. On August 1st,
what?
I'm guessing it's a soccer or football team. Yeah,
fair enough.
The chess squad. All right,
Some
lawn darts.
Context here. What sporting event are we talking about?
That's all it says. I don't know.
When you go to Netherlands and see the Marco statue, you'll know then.
Right.
Oh, okay.
And he's holding like a badminton.
Yeah, paddle. And a shuttlecock.
There we go. All right, on August 1st, a supermarket fire kills 396 people and injures 500 in Paraguay.
God.
Wow, that's a lot less funny than the last story.
That's a huge
Jesus,
supermarket.
Brandon.
That is a big supermarket. That is a bad fire sale.
And we're back from the edit that he had to make from all those jokes we just told.
Yeah. Oh, man.
I was going to make a joke about supermarket sweep, but that was worse.
That's a terrible thing that happened.
That's a lot of people in a.
That's horrible.
That's enough where we need to do like ancillary work after this to find out what happened exactly, because that's terrible.
I bet there was some building codes being violated.
Was there like a single door that was the way in and the way out? Like,
Hold on. Now I want to know because I do vaguely remember this.
We start a separate.
Where did this take place?
Paraguay.
A place known for well-built supermarkets.
Right. This is like, I imagine it'd have to be the size of like a Walmart or Meijer or one of those giant, or a Buc-ee's. Have you heard of Buc-ee's? These gigantic convenience stores that are like, you're going on a long trip, there's probably a Buc-ee's.
Is that where,
Oh my God, you were not kidding.
I
Okay.
don't make this. I don't
That's
make
why I
up
think-
news stories.
No. What Aaron kind of sort of said.
Oh.
When the fire broke out, the owners intentionally closed the doors to prevent people from fleeing with merchandise without paying for it.
What?
They
What?
denied this charge, but charges were filed, which is arguably one reason why so many people were killed.
Those
Sweet
avocados
Jesus.
are expensive. God. Wow.
Again, lawsuit, shoplifting.
Deaths on our hands, or we lost some melons. Like what?
300 fucking wrongful death suits versus shoplifting.
God.
Anyway.
All right.
Oh.
Wow.
So what's the next topic?
I will continue to no longer shop at
Is
Big
this the
Lots.
week of the Russian theater fire with all those children being killed, or is that later
No.
this summer?
But we do have some golf going on. So at
okay,
the
good.
on the same day, the British Open women's golf in Sunningdale, England, England's Karen Stupples wins her lone major title, 5 shots ahead of runner-up Rachel Teskey of Australia. And then in the men's, Peter Jacobsen wins by 1 shot from 2-time champion Hale Irwin. So there we go. And to pile on to the 396 deaths, here are more that happened this week. Saifo Gumid, a jazz legend.
I think it's Master Sifo-Dyas.
Master Saifo. It is Saifo. It is Saifo, but it's Gumid.
Smash that subscribe button.
Olympic athlete Bob Tisdale. Actor from Foul Play and Slaughterhouse 5, Eugene Roche.
Okay.
Molecular biologist that's the molecular biologist that discovered DNA that structure, Francis Crick, passed away.
But Will Smith was told he was a terrorist.
Actor Sam Edwards, actor Andrew Noble, actress Virginia Gray, and Nobel Prize winning physicist Philip Abelson. We do have a birthday for the first time in a while. Race car driver Delano Van Hoff. Happy birthday. He's 20 and racing. We do have a couple weddings this week. Lady Davina Windsor and surfer Gary Lewis got married. Tom Cavanaugh and Sports Illustrated photo editor Marine Grease. And then Nicolas Cage and Alice Kim are married.
And that's still going, right? Or
He
is
was
that-
40 and she is 20.
Is that the one he's still married to? Right? I
I think he might be.
think so, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was 20 years.
20 years. Yeah. And divorces, none this week.
Oh, okay.
Though, if you
Oh,
want
and
to, you want to talk
just-
about a divorce from your source material, we can head right on into Thunderbirds, our first movie this
I'll
week.
allow it.
There we go. Directed by
Speaking of catastrophes, the Russian theater fire that I referenced does not occur
Oh.
until September of this year.
oh,
so we
okay.
will not be discussing that.
You were
Nope.
early on the children deaths that you wanted to talk
The,
about.
the September of 2004
Around 180.
at 20. Jeez. All
Speaking
right.
of murders,
Thunderbirds.
This summer,
Mayday! Mayday!
the Thunderbirds are teaming up to take evil down.
Time to thunderize. Reverse main thrusters on my mark.
Thunderbirds are go. This Friday, rated PG in theaters everywhere.
Directed by number 2 himself, Jonathan Frakes. Written by William Osborne and Michael McCullers on a story by Osborne and Peter Hewitt, based on a TV series by Jerry and Sylvia Anderson. Starring Bill Paxton, Brady Corbett, Jeannie Francis, Sophia Miles, Ron Cook, Anthony Edwards, Vanessa Hudgens, and Ben Kingsley. When the Hood finds and invades International Rescue's secret base and traps most of the Tracy family, only young Alan Tracy and his friends can save the day. Scott, what happened?
Yeah, I think the same thing I did.
All right.
That's some key details going on that were very amusing.
You first, dear God. No,
Wait, what is
Jonathan
so
Frakes-
funny? Where were we at here? Come
For
on.
some reason, when you said the Hood, for some reason, I got this image of like stereotypical, frankly, African American gangsters, drug dealers, invading the Thunderbirds headquarters. However problematic that may be, it would have made a far more entertaining movie than the one we got.
Now imagine, because this is the Thunderbirds. This is based on that TV show that was all marionette puppets. And,
Yes.
And now imagine that as marionette puppets.
Again, would have been better than what we got.
Which
And then,
I feel so. Yeah, we'll get into this. So Scott, Thunderbirds.
It was very nice of Jonathan Frakes, best known as number 2 on Star Trek, direct this giant pile of shit.
Is this is after Clock Stoppers, right? Which he got pretty good notices.
Clock
for Clock
Stoppers is
Stoppers.
02.
Yeah, he got pretty good notices for that one.
No, I mean it is what it is. This isn't, it's as you said, the original show is mostly notable because it's this actiony Mission Impossible gadgety spy show that's all puppets. And if you take away the puppets, what do you got? And the answer is not much. And that's sort of like, it's Dennis Hopper's line toward the end of Speed. It's like, when you stop a bomb from being a bomb, what do you have? And you take away the thing that made Thunderbirds remotely unique. And I mean, I guess it's a ripoff of Spy Kids. Okay, fine, whatever. But also it's another one of those movies where, hey kids, do you want to see a film with the Thunderbirds? Too bad. You're seeing them in prison most of the movie while 1 or 2 of their children, rescue them the whole time. So again, it's like, it's who, I don't want to say who is this for, but again, if you're making a Thunderbirds movie, and not only do you not make it with puppets, not only do you bench the Thunderbirds characters as we know them for the majority of the movie, what do you have to offer? And if it's just, it's a big budget action adventure kids movie, great, wonderful. Okay, guess what? They're seeing Shrek 2 and Spider-Man 2 instead. Or they're being cool and sneaking into Errol New Kumar. Maybe they're buying a ticket to Bourne or Catwoman. I don't know. But as a movie, it's generic as hell. Feels like it was written by Mad Libs. Against all odds, Bill Paxton is good because he's Bill Paxton. But the lead character is, almost ahead of his time in being a generic, who the hell is this kid, generic white would-be movie star who's trying to inherit the mantle of this franchise, and he's the most boring part of the movie, but he's the person that we follow through the entire film. Garrett Hedlund, there's your role model.
Naturally, he would go on to direct Vox Lux. So,
are you fucking kidding me?
No,
that's amazing.
It's Brady Corbett, yeah.
Brady Corbett, yeah.
Wow, yeah. Good for him. I feel bad for saying mean things about him now. Carry on. By the way, and this is going to be old news by the time this airs. The article you sent me about Amazon doing a young Sherlock Holmes show starring the one white guy from The Woman King.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, the film, I mean, it's a $50 million movie, and you can kind of sort of see the budget on the screen. Production values are fine as far as these things go. The interplay between the cast members when they're actually doing the daring do is harmless. Ben Kingsley is still at that point in his career where it's a little unusual to see him play an outright bad guy. He's sort of in between the, kind of the villain, but complicated from Sneakers versus just, a jackass from Sexy Beast. Who, to be fair, spoilers, he gets killed halfway through that film. But he's sort of like trying in a way that I almost appreciate. I mean, and honestly, I'm struggling to think things to say because it's exactly as bad in exactly the way that you'd expect it to be. It's interesting in that it's Vanessa Hudgens' first major movie. She was in 13. I have not seen that movie in a very long time. I don't know how big of a
There's
part she had
nothing
in that.
interesting about that fact.
No.
Beyond just saying that as a fact.
Yeah.
There's nothing interesting about that.
What was that?
You said it's interesting, and it's like there's nothing interesting about that.
Whatever. Everyone's got to start somewhere.
All right. So counterpoint, Aaron.
Counterpoint.
Wait. In conclusion, Thunderbirds are no.
Nailed that. Outside of two films that I just think are incompetently made, this is the worst thing we've seen this summer by far. This is like it gets ahead of two other movies just because this one at least is made by people that have made movies before, so that helps it compared to those other ones. This is the worst kind of movie as far as it has the means to do something, it's arranged stars to do something, but it does poorly with all of those aspects, takes on a thing that doesn't stay true to it in a way that it's not just a matter of, oh, you got this part wrong. It's you've literally stripped it of all the things that make that thing the thing it is. So it's just like you just slapped the word Thunderbirds on it and coated it with paint that's resembled something. Even that's hard to say because again, it's not puppets. And again, I mentioned this last week, but we're in a year where we're gonna have a big budget puppet movie come out, and yet the kids movie decided to go against that idea. If anything, this would have retroactively made Team America even better if this movie did have puppets, just because it's like, and now here's this version. And instead, it doesn't even have the the cojones to pull that off, and it replaces it with junk. I mean, say what you will about, I guess, the sequels to Spy Kids out after 2, because the first 2 are pretty solid, but like Robert Rodriguez made those at like his garage and they look fucking cool. Like this movie is
Hey,
nonsense.
Stallone's having a ball in 3D.
No one's ever having a bad time in those movies, regardless how much I am not a big fan of the sequels after 2. Everyone seems to show up, be like, yeah, I want to hang out with Robert. Like, sure. This movie, this feels like every adult in this has a child that told them, why don't you do any kids movies, daddy or mommy? And then they said, okay, fine, and accepted the money for this. Yeah, Paxton in anything is not going to be a bad thing, but he's not holding this thing together by any means. Neither Kingsley's not hammy enough or interested enough in doing anything that's making this more than just, and then I said yes to the money. Like, there's nothing here. No, this is a bad thing. This is like this went like into the head and out very quickly just watching this because I was so flabbergasted. But like I had never seen this movie. I knew of its reputation of being garbage, and I wasn't about to be like, well, I'm finally gonna prove them wrong and watch Thundercats, but or Thunderbirds.
I would have rather watched Thundercats. Yeah,
right. But just watching is like, yeah, this is the pits. I mean, there's everything about like what sucks about these kinds of movies is apparent in this movie. This is a textbook example of like bad spending as far as wannabe Hollywood blockbusters go. It is colorful noise at best, and there's a lot of other colorful noise that has a lot more brains and other things going for it throughout this summer that you could watch instead. So no deal.
yeah.
My favorite favorite parts of the film, two things. A, if I were like a 14-year-old boy and 14-year-old Vanessa Hudgens was apparently into me, I wouldn't give a shit about whether or not I got to be a Thunderbird or not. Second, this is a film so tonally out of tune with the story it's telling. It has Anthony Edwards' character being comedically hit on while he thinks his children have been murdered.
Huh. Yeah. So this movie, it's so weird because I saw Thunderbirds and I'm like, Thunderbird, like that was one of the puppet shows, right? But I'm watching did they just name it the same? And it's like, no, no, they didn't. They were like, you know what? Why be us? Let's try to be GoBots to the Spy Kids movies for some freaking reason. There was also another show at the time called Captain Scarlet, and these used to they used to rerun these on the Sci-Fi Channel back when it was SCI-FI. And I always would turn them on in Fascination because they creep me out. Like the little puppet, the marionette shows. They just were creepy to me. It's the way
That's fair. Yeah.
they look creepy. I don't know what kid was like, yeah, Thunderbirds here. In this is the nostalgia for I don't know who. Maybe the reruns on Sci-Fi Channel were kicking ass, and they were like, okay, get this modernized into production. But like, you stripped away everything that was the Thunderbirds, as like Scott said, you have nothing. But this is so last year, like when we did Summer of '93 at 30, we had something just like this happen. The thing that some kids liked or was based on a property that once it got to live action movie form barely resembled what it had before, and that's the Super Mario Brothers the movie. Like this is that concept. I mean that one, but at least that one is fascinating. There's nothing fucking fascinating about this at all. Like the Mario Brothers movie is one of the great failures of our time, but because of that, it's entirely watchable and studyable and just like, this is crazy, right? And it's like, well, nothing. This is just, I don't even know if they watched the Thunderbirds or just got a Cliff Notes. This also adds just a movie itself is so bad. Like there's like 3 different movies happening throughout this that I don't even know if they're connected to each other. I don't know what Sophia Miles is doing. She shows up, introduces herself to some people,
secret agent person,
and then she's got this whole plot where she's in a room with some guy and just sort of like, all right, oh, those Thunderbirds. Oh, I'm gonna do it myself, but not like hook up with anyone going around. And like, okay, and then there's the kid's story and Ben Kingsley, and I guess they're gonna meet, but I don't feel like they ever are. Like, I felt like there was 3 different movies going on, but they were trying to form one, like Voltron or something, but it just never cleanly did it at all. Nobody's, I Bill Paxton, but he's not in this enough, and I don't care. And he's just hanging around. Like he's probably like, I made this awesome movie named Frailty a couple years ago, trying to do these to fund my next one that I'll never do or whatever. But
golf movie he made with Shia LaBeouf.
That's right. So I just, this thing was a chore to get through, and it's short too. Like it sucks. Like it was just like, whoo, and like we talk about bad kids movies.
Yeah, we've had a few of them.
Nothing got here where I was checked out 5 minutes in. Like it's just not. You just kind of see the writing on the wall real fast with this one. There's no chance. And like it feels like they're using spare sets from some Nickelodeon show to save money or something like that. It just, I wanted to do anything else when I was watching this movie.
There's a scene where one of the kids uses gymnastics to outsmart a henchman and then locks them inside a cage. And I'm like, oh, they lost worlded him.
Yeah, made you appreciate that one a little more, didn't it, Aaron?
No.
Yeah.
Do you think Ben Kingsley signed up and was like, I hope there's 3 more on my contract, so in case this is a hit, I get to keep playing this character?
Oh my God. I don't know.
What studio is it? Sony? What is this?
I hope everyone had a good time making this movie, so someone did.
Who did this thing?
Hold on. Universal.
Universal. Okay.
Studio Canal. This is a British motherfucker.
Yeah, that tracks.
Okay. Well, usually Lionsgate puts out their stuff here.
This is
Well,
Lionsgate
like
was
on
like,
home video at
no.
least.
This is too glossy for Lionsgate.
Yeah, this is too bad even for us.
So the Blu-ray, yes, it got to Blu-ray. Was released by Universal Studios. Back in 2020, so it was a recent
You
release.
look up what 2-packs it's being sold with.
None. It is like literally by itself. Yeah, Thunderbird. Oh wait. Oh no. They have 2-packs for the original series with stuff, because I guess so the complete series you can buy, and that's from Timeless Media Group. But yeah,
How much better would this movie have been if it was like, okay, have the dopey live action stuff with the people, but like at least the ships and things were like still done with like puppets or whatever. Like that's at least a choice. Like that'd be something.
or at least have like a character that's a puppet hanging with everybody that they have to act with and stuff.
It was just like a
I
cartoon
mean-
cat in Last Action Hero. Just like this guy.
Or like give them a shitty robot to like deal with, you know? Like
I was surprised at
something.
the lack of shitty robot companion character. That did seem like something this movie was
Yeah.
missing.
Well, they
I
have
mean,
the
I first became
lead.
aware of this property when reruns first started airing on Nickelodeon in the late 80s, maybe early 90s.
Is that when
And
they had
even
Danger
then, I don't
Mouse?
think- Yeah, and even
Yeah.
then, I don't think anyone like, oh, this show is unironically terrific. I
Yeah.
would love to see a movie version of this. Even there, we were like, this is ridiculous. I can't stop watching.
This feels like something people would do now, not 2004. Like, what do we got? We've used everything. We got a little puppet show called the Thunderbirds. We
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
if,
Netflix
If you
will
make a
keep it.
Lancelot Link movie, you don't do it with humans, you dumbass.
I do like that back in the day there were these like husband-wife duos that made these like low budget TV shows like this and Land of the Lost. It's
Well,
like-
yeah. So Jerry and Sylvia Anderson, they also made Space 1999. That's
okay.
they made that show. They also had a show called UFO. They were like hot in the 60s and 70s television scene. Like I think from late 50s through the 70s, they were like prime. Like if you wanted genre TV, you went to them for stuff. So they were a pretty big name. But then they had a messy divorce, which actually happens between the first 2 seasons of Space 1999, and they're it becomes a pretty drastically different show between the first and second season. And they were handling a divorce, and they like kind of had reins on it, but had to hand it to the guy who did Star Trek's 3rd season. And he changes up the show. They had like the most banging theme song for season 1, and they're like, you know what? We're revamping this. We're retooling the show. We have an alien character on the ship now. We have a crazier theme song, and yeah, all that stuff. But yeah, that was a husband-wife team did all that stuff.
What does Frakes do after this? Is this his directorial opus, or does he have more to go? Or-
I think he's still direct. He does TV. I think he.
I figure TV because who doesn't? But like, where's the? Let's see. Is there another like feature on here?
I'm sure he does more. I think he did something like he got something recently.
He has
but,
some TV. He has a TV movie. Let's see.
he's got 47. I mean, he directs a lot of Star Trek now because, of course, he did Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
He did The Librarian and The
Burn
Librarian,
Notice.
The Librarian 3, but not The Librarian 2 because that one was a masterpiece. That's not Frakes material.
Yeah, they wanted to go big. He did the
He
V.
did a couple Orville's, which must have been a little trippy.
Oh yeah, I
Yep.
see all the TV stuff.
Yeah.
So this is his last like feature film.
Yeah, Clock Stoppers and then Thunderbirds and yeah.
He did a lot of Star Treks, if I'm right. Is that the thing? He did a lot
Right.
of-
Well, no, but I mean the Star Treks isn't till later with the new
No,
Paramount
the
Plus
the
stuff.
movies. He directed
Oh,
movies.
he did he did First Contact and Insurrection. So he did one of the most successful ones and then followed it up with one of the least successful ones. But
Yeah, but he didn't do Nemesis, so he avoided that train.
right,
Okay.
yeah. He was like very much like the Nimoy of the next generation folks that went on to doing directing and stuff. But I think directing was always his bag because he was a prime the 80s and stuff like, and they gave him that Ripley's Believe It or Not show to do. He was doing, I think, concurrently with Star Trek for a little bit, but I think directing was always where he wanted to go. Which I always
If Disney Plus ever does make a remake of 3 Men and a Baby, they should hire him just for.
I was
That'd be
going to say,
funny.
Clock Stoppers was his 3 Men and a Baby.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I always thought of him like, I feel like in the 80s he would have been like seen as like oh, we can't get Robert Urich, we'll get Jonathan Frakes.
All right.
That's what he kind of reminded me of. But He's a fun guy. He's a really insightful person. I wish he made better films, but like he's a pretty insightful guy to hear talk about things. So he's
As
got that going for him too. Yeah.
as the least involved with Trek, every time
Yeah.
I've seen him, he seems like a guy with
Yeah,
a kid at him.
next generation cast are all like a real bunch of like LeVar Burton, like all those people are really pretty inspired individuals that are fun to hear chat. They all love each other, so that's a fun thing as well. So
Random trivia: Clock Stoppers co-stars Michael Biehn, who of course starred with Bill Paxton in a few Cameron pictures, and Paula Garces, who stars in Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle.
there you go. The recreational habit that Harold and Kumar have probably wouldn't even help Thunderbirds be enjoyable. But let us proceed over to White Castle with Harold and Kumar.
Kumar. What is it, like 5 O's or 2 U's?
If you've ever been picked on,
What happened to good old American names like Dave, Harold?
put down,
Have you seen a Korean guy around here?
Yeah, only when I open my eyes, though.
and misunderstood,
I'm telling you, those guys love crunching numbers. Probably just made his weekend.
we have a movie for you from the director of
Dude, where's my car?
Tomorrow. See what all the buzz is about.
Well, what are you in here for?
For being black.
And I have 2 gay fathers.
Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. Rated R. Starts
Directed by Danny Leaner, written by John Hurwitz and Hayden Schlossberg, starring John Cho, Cal Penn, Neil Patrick Harris, Ethan Embry, Fred Willard, Steve Braun, Paula Garces, David Krumholtz, Eddie K. Thomas, Angel Sarushas, Anthony Anderson, Bobby Lee, Suta, Kate Kelton, Brooke Dorsey, Ryan Reynolds, Christopher Maloney, and Malin Ackerman. A Korean-American office worker and his Indian-American stoner friend embark on a quest to satisfy their desire for White Castle burgers. That synopsis was totally written in 2004 and never changed on. Like
it boils it down pretty well.
none of that white boy shit in this movie, okay? We got plenty of white boy shit in this movie, but so yeah, this is a little comedy. At the time, Cal Penn was like the sidekick guy from Van Wilder, and then John Cho was like this little bit guy from American Pie movies.
You know how I know that? Because the trailer told me that Indian guy from Van Wilder.
Oh, that's right.
Asian guy from American Pie.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, this little sneaker here, Aaron, Harold, Kumar, White Castle, go.
So that trailer I just referenced, I hated it. I saw this trailer because I'm going to the movies all summer, so I'm seeing this trailer over and over again for Harold and Kumar, and I'm into the idea of, okay, these 2 guys are going to be in a movie. Cool. They don't get to do that. That's not, a standard thing when it comes to stoner comedies or raunchy comedies or what have you. So yeah, okay, I like them well enough. John Cho more so because Cal Penn.
John Cho more so. I like that. Thank you.
More so because Cal Penn. I think Van Wilder's a terrible movie, and this is me peak not liking Ryan Reynolds. I don't care for his shtick at all at this point, and it hasn't changed too much. But I think he's fine comparatively. But like Cal Penn plays a character where I'm like, I know this is not who you are, and it's very annoying that you're in this role. But I'm glad that you found success. So regardless, I'm seeing, but John Cho, I'm like, okay, he's that guy in American Pie. And he's had some like I think a few like TV shows where they didn't like go past a couple of, they got canceled pretty quickly. But he's been around enough where I'm like, I get this guy's personality and I enjoy it. So like anticipation wise, I'm like, despite this trailer that I hate, I like the idea of this. These 2 guys, they got to go to White Castle. Stuff ensues. Neil Patrick Harris is going to jump in eventually. That's funny. I like that. This movie, I watched it. I thought it was fine. I was disappointed. I was mildly disappointed that it wasn't funnier to me. Now, we'll probably speak to this, but the idea of what it's after from an intellectual level, I think is, nice. There's a progressive angle it's aiming for, and it's trying to address certain things. I think execution wise, I don't think it really pulls it off as well as it could. as far as kind of making statements on, these types of characters versus these, terrible white people that keep interfering with them or what have you. I think it's going for something, but it's not it's not directed well enough to pull that off in a way that I found to be insightful. In terms of just gags, though, there's a lot of funny bits in this. I've never found this this is only the second time I've ever seen this movie in full. It's never one that I've gone back to be like, oh yeah, I can't wait to relive the laughs of Harold and Kumar. That said, the first sequel to this thing is a fucking nightmare. So I mean, by default, I've always held this at least somewhat high because Escape from Guantanamo Bay is as bad as Thunderbirds.
It's a war crime.
So that said, the third one, the Christmas one, might be my favorite one. I think it has a lot of good gags, at least as I can recall. As far as the cast goes, I like seeing Kal Penn here a lot because he's very funny, but he also plays. He doesn't have to play a stereotype. And if anything, his character has an interesting arc because he has to lean to the idea of his father pushing him to become a stereotype to a degree, and how he goes about going around. That stuff's neat to me. John Cho, I don't think he's bad. It's just it annoys me that he has to play the kind of straight-laced guy so much when I know he can do more, and I get that that's the arc of the movie for him to loosen up essentially. But he is really whiny. This movie, and it takes a long time for me to settle in with him being basically not cool. I know John Cho is a guy that's basically cool in a lot of movies. He has a low-key energy that I generally like.
I always if I ever made an Asian Shaft movie, he would be my Shaft.
I mean, him being cast as Spike Spiegel in the Cowboy Bebop live action series. Say what you will about that series as a whole, but I do think he made for a good Spike.
He's a super cool dude.
He has a suaveness to him that I appreciate. This movie, granted, it's a role and it has an arc, like I said, but it's it's doing a lot for me to be like, I have to not think of you this way right now and just enjoy this version of you, and it's not as enjoyable watching them banter as much as I'd like it to be. That said, again, there's a lot of good gags in this. There's bits in this that I enjoy. There's some that I don't, but ones that range more scatological. I'm like, whatever. And the other thing that I always would have hoped for is you have Eddie K. Thomas and David Krumholtz in here. And I always figured, what's their movie? I want to see that side sequel where you watch the two Jews go along. I'm like, this seems cool to me. I want to see what that'd be a fun branching universe if we had. What's it, Goldstein and what's the other character's name? But they that the fact that they meet up in the middle of the movie again, they've had their own journey. I get that it's to begin with, but it's I kind of want to see what that movie is also. Still, I think the movie's fine. It's not a comedy classic in my eyes. It makes me laugh well enough. I wish it was better made. But still, it mostly does its job.
Scott?
I was lucky in that I knew who they were, but I didn't see Van Wilder until a few years after I saw this. My first noticing him exposure to Ryan Reynolds was really the Amityville Horror remake from 2005.
Okay.
So for me, it's
nobody liked Two Guys, a Girl in a Pizza Place. Jesus.
It's I not big on his comic stuff, but he's a really good dramatic actor. So I will give him the benefit of the doubt when he does real, drama. But anyway, I saw this in a sneak preview the same weekend that, Catwoman and Bourne came out. And I fucking loved it. What was that?
Busy weekend.
No, we didn't see those two. We saw this one instead.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I saw Bourne the next week.
All right.
Which is funny because I even said that it's there's two really high profile movies coming out where okay. But I ended up loving it. At the time, I would have told you, it was probably my favorite mainstream theatrical Hollywood comedy of the 2000s. I thought it was very funny. I really enjoyed their interplay. I loved seeing a bunch of character actors that I know and like pop up and be goofy. And yes, I did, getting back to the whole, we're on the cusp of not being as dickish as we used to be situation. It did feel to me I maybe leaned into the professor character's philosophy more than I should have, if that makes sense. The idea that the universe will eventually go as it should. Rewatching it now, I still think it's very funny. I still think it's very clever. I still enjoy the picture on a surface level in terms of its pacing and its structure. More gay panic humor than I remember. Whatever. To be fair, that's one character who's kind of the dick of the duo. And I do find it maybe a less optimistic movie than I perhaps took it as with Blinders on 20 years ago. There is a darkness to it and a harder edge, especially knowing what would come next. That maybe the universe wouldn't play out as it should, et cetera, et cetera. That being said, I still find it to be a very funny, entertaining road trip stoner comedy with two actors who I really enjoy playing characters that, whether they're playing to type or not, they seem to be having fun. And there are, certain beats in this that, regardless of, social progress or whatever, the battleship scene is spectacular. It's just very funny. It's very clever. And there's a lot of bits in this.
It's funny, yeah. I say
no. I didn't ask if it's funny.
It's clever because they're two very hoity-toity hot British women. And that itself is the joke. It's not just two people randomly shitting in a bathroom. And I think this film at its best does do the but yes and approach.
Yes.
And obviously this was when Chris Maloney was doing this, once a month, and we were lucky to have that. This kind of comedy. God, did I see this I saw this very soon after I saw Wet Hot American Summer.
There you go. He got it.
So yeah, I was like, oh, Maloney does this. Neat.
What are other, because I can think of those two. What are other Maloney comedy things that he's like randomly shows up?
Well, he would be on Scrubs now and then. And he had this couple Fox shows, like he was like a puppet cop or something. I don't remember the details. Maybe it was USA. But he had some really weird, overly comedic stuff that he was doing on the side.
Friends with the David Wayne crowd. I know that. I know he's, and I've seen him be funny. But I'm just trying to was none of this that I wasn't aware of. I can think of those two. Okay, fair enough.
The Neil Patrick Harris stuff, whatever. Honestly, that didn't do much for me because, again, even if that one way or another about who Neil Patrick Harris was as a human being. The fact that he played Doogie Howser for a few years did not make this character more surprising. But that being said, the character's reactions to him and his role in the story is fine unto itself.
It's the randomness that makes it fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Neil Patrick Harris is this before How
This is pretty much the audition for. Yeah, this is what. Yeah.
So
another classic example of this groundbreaking comedy about two not a white guy protagonists. The white guy becomes a superstar. Yay! He's gay, so it's better. Whatever.
It's the equivalent of like Ralph Macchio showed up. It's like it's just random.
It was insert like 80s celebrity that hasn't done much since here. Because Neil Patrick Harris was voicing Spider-Man on the cartoon at this time. I think that's what he was up to.
Sure. Yes, that was his big claim to fame at that time. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't want to say rock bottom because that's mean, but
he's fun.
Yeah. And maybe that's just, again, I saw the movie, I liked the movie, but then like weeks afterwards, like, oh, I can't believe Neil Patrick Harris does this. It's like, he's an actor. Actors act. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, again, in a vacuum, I still think it's very clever. It's very funny. I have a really good time with it. And then in terms of, how I reacted to it 20 years ago versus now, yeah, it's not quite the aspirational triumph that I took it for 20 years ago, but I know that some of that is circumstantial and I can't hold that against the movie.
Mm-hmm.
The Patrick Harris thing, by the third one, it does become funnier since you very much he's come out at that point,
right?
And the fucking second one, Jesus Christ,
that amplifies him a little bit more there.
So
I could not think. Again, it's not a Harold and Kumar movie's job to stop the war on terror. I'm aware of that, but that film plays into everything's fine. It's just a bunch of bad apples. Let's just move on and not look bullshit that you could possibly imagine from that era. I mean, I know this is hyperbole. In that sense, I think that is a genuinely evil movie.
It's also badly made and not funny. That's the other part of it too.
Yeah, that doesn't help.
All right.
But
so I saw this movie. I was college boy, so this thing was like this traveled pretty good and was quoted a lot as well. And I really liked the movie when I saw it. It was, I like the concept of the crazy night out. You have one simple task, but everything keeps you from everything from After Hours to Trojan War. You know, those kind of
Trojan War.
Yeah, I'm pulling out Trojan War.
Yeah.
Pulling out Trojan War.
Three people got excited.
The Keanu Reeves film, The Night After, which actually is really funny.
Yeah. So I mean, I love that concept. This one does it quite well. It's got a lot of fun setups, payoffs, cameos, all through it. Heavily just quotable. We used to, but marijuana, why? That used to be a quote around.
I do think it's very funny that one of Ryan Reynolds' most famous GIFs or whatever is from his Good Sport cameo in this movie.
Right. Yes. Which I was worried going back to watch this because a lot of the comedies of this era, I don't go back and watch, and I know I laughed my ass off at a lot of them that I go back watch now and be like, but this one mostly commendable. There's some, like you said, the homophobic stuff that's coming out of Cal Penn, who is now openly gay. I don't know. There's some creativity with it. I do like you said, like there's this curiosity the Krumholtz Eddie K. Thomas part that's funny. Maybe there's an Anchorman footage on the ground where there's a whole nother movie. Yeah, Wake Up Goldstein. But I think that's part of the fun is they leaves you kind of wondering and wanting more, making up.
Oh yeah, it's the same as like the Shaun of the Dead gag of like the other guy like passes them by.
Or you know,
get it.
I mean, sure,
well, there's the gag of them
Victorian-
being like, those guys look like lame versions of us.
Yeah. It's just I genuinely like Eddie K. Thomas and David Krumholtz. It's like that would be a funny movie. Like that's
right.
just...
And I would love to see a 21 Jump Street spinoff showing Dakota Johnson's unit on their adventures.
Right.
For reasons.
It was weird when I first saw this and this now when like the movie opens it up and it's got like a theme song. I'm like, were they planning to make like a bunch of these right from the jump? Because like Harold and Kumar. I was like, okay. Also, nobody mentioned this is like the breakout of Malin Ackerman because she's here and then is kind of like she goes there's like the Heartbreak Kid. She'll have like a run here of a lot of roles, but I feel like it starts
she also finds her way into the David Wayne group as far as like those like a lot because there's like Children's Hospital and stuff like that for a while, and then there's that show The Comeback with Lisa Kudrow. That was the other thing she was on as well.
I mean, she had Watchmen, but like she sort of breaks out here with this one with the Maloney, the just weird sequence here, but it all comes together. It all works. There's stupid stuff like the cheetah and the hang glider, but stoner comedy. Let's get crazy. Go with it. But
so that's a thing. I also like. I'm not a stoner, so I always wonder: is that like a core aspect that I miss? Two core aspects I think I'm missing. One is there's not an imperative for me to be like I'm gonna get high and watch this thing because it's just not a thing I do. But also the other key thing, I've never had White Castle. Like they're not out here, so I've never had it. So
like Napoleon Dynamite, you have the disconnect of the locality.
I mean,
not knowing what
no, you're not wrong. I get it.
They're
funny,
fine.
But the ultimate goal they're trying to reach, I guess, like my mind is not being like, well, at least they have to get there at some point. Like my head's not wrapping around like what that's gonna feel like for them in the same way that I feel like you can't.
So if you go to a White Castle at like the wee hours of the morning, there's a good chance it's full. But the White Castle itself is not something I've ever craved in my entire life, even though it's called a crave case.
With the stoner aspect, I'd imagine as well.
I guess so. Like even if I was stoned, I would go to like a Steak and Shake or something. Like that's another local place. Yes, but White Castle, I would even go with they have like a chicken rings is a thing, and they make a sandwich out of those. I'm like, go for those. And yeah, I don't. Not to, but one thing White Castle does that's funny is they do a Valentine's Day thing. So they set up nice candlelit tables and stuff, and you make reservations, which is kind of funny. But yeah, White Castle. It's not a I mean, there's so where you're like, what is this White Castle here? A lot of people over here like hear the legends of In and Out. But that like actually is a decent burger and trip to make. You can skip White Castle. Like they're frozen patties get thrown on a thing. It's cheap, but it is not. I have found the secret though. If you're having stomach problems, eat White Castle. You will probably be cleared of them. I will say that.
Which direction?
North.
No, I mean I've had White Castle maybe 3 or 4 times in my life, and they're fine, whatever.
It was a bigger deal in like the 80s. I would say White Castle was a much bigger deal.
The sheer mediocrity of the establishment is part of the joke.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of gathered that, and I'd be more, if anything, I'd be more excited to get a Whataburger, if anything. I don't have go.
Shake Shack, that's a better.
We have those now. We have Shake Shack and Steak and Shake, kind of is around, but anyway, that's always been like another just aspect of this to me, where it's just like I don't have like a deeper connection because of the.
You're not missing out, sir. Like
you don't understand Harold and Kumar go to White Castle.
But you did point out things like, watching it now, you pointed out things like the hang glider and the cheetah stuff and whatever. And it's like, I mean,
that's more of an acid trip thing than stoned.
That's what I'm getting at. That's the other thing. Like, as far as how drug humor plays into this, it doesn't. I mean, I get that it's not reality, but it's still like a lot. If it's all going to amount to the mom in Transformers 2, like plays crazy frisbee because she ate pot brownies, I'm like, like have something authentic.
Like, what's this shit laced with that you're smoking? Because it's not, to be fair, marijuana.
The visual of the cheetah is funny, so I can roll with that.
I
was surprised the CG cheetah held up pretty decently.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that's where the money went. And like I didn't forget, but it's like I don't think about it. But like Bobby Lee is funny in this movie. Like he made me laugh. It is because he's playing this like played like stereotypical nerd Asian, and then he becomes like crazy party Asian.
Yes.
And it's Bobby Lee who commits. So there's I mean, again, I like this movie. There's plenty of gags I think that work quite well. And yes, Scott, you're mentioning kind of the darker edge that it has. I appreciate that that's there. I feel like there's a way if there was a better director handling or just better direction handling this, I feel like the balance would be clearer, and I get the ideal version of this movie. I feel like a movie, what's it called? Emergency, that came out a couple years ago. It went straight to Amazon. It was a Sundance thing. That one's like this in a lot of ways, and Superbad. But Superbad's all white people. Emergency's black kids. That's one where like it hits what I'm after with this movie.
If you want a better director handling a stoner comedy, Pineapple Express hits the spot.
David Gordon, I really like Pineapple Express. It has nothing to really say compared to this movie, but I think it's a really well-made approximation of 80s action movie mixed with stoner comedy.
Yes. Yeah.
The director
like
of Super Angels.
Yes.
And George Washington.
I remember, so I saw Pineapple Express with a friend we went to a test screening of it. So and we were watching it, and the director credit came up and it said directed by David Gordon Green, and my friend's like, the fuck? Like,
real girls?
Because I think the director credit came up at the end. I don't think it was at the beginning in the cut we saw, and it came up, and it was like the biggest twist for the movie. It's like,
that's the kind of insider knowledge that'll get you kicked out of a test screening.
Yeah, no. But it's like, what the fuck? Like,
that'd be like watching all of Green Book and seeing Peter Farrelly come
right, yeah, exactly. The reverse.
Like Ghost is directed by what?
Yeah. But yeah, it was funny because it just said Seth Rogen and James Franco's stoner comedy, and we're like, okay, we went and saw it, and Seth Rogen and James Franco were there. They like greeted everybody and said bye to everybody as we left. And no, James Franco wasn't talking to any underage girls while I was there, but it was funny.
Of.
Yeah, that I know. But the thing was that we picked up was like this Danny McBride fella's a genius. Who the hell's play?
Yeah.
And then we waited with bated breath for someone to finally release Foot Fist Way, and it came like the next summer. But yeah, but that's a different stoner comedy where Harold and Kumar go to White Castle.
Summer of 17.
Summer of 4 years from now. A movie with hopes of knocking off The Dark Knight. Man, summer 2008 would be boring. Dark Knight. It was like E.T. in 82. And well, what's number 2?
But only because Mummy sucked and Pineapple Express opened on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
If Mummy hadn't been terrible, that would have been number 1 in Dark Knight's third weekend.
Right.
If Pineapple had opened on a Friday, that would have been number 1 on Dark Knight's fourth weekend. I actually use that as an example when I'm talking about why rank doesn't matter, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
How'd X-Files do?
Sorry, what?
How did X-Files do?
Well, had it not been not great, it might have come in a better second to The Dark Knight.
Charitable.
It did. I think it opened
great.
with 10 million. Wait, did I open with?
This is not important.
Step Brothers opened with like $30 million that weekend.
Yes,
because
gotcha.
we went to the movies. X-Files, I think, was closer to like 10.
Cool.
The truth was not out there.
This is your preview of the summer of 2008 at 17.
Scott gets to talk
We
about.
won't have anything to talk about that summer.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So, but hey, you said X-Files, right? That was on TV, and we can move on to the TV ratings.
This fall, one detective is bringing unsolved murders back to life.
People shouldn't be forgotten. They should get justice.
From the producer of CSI, Cold Case on CBS.
I'm gonna say this. I have to preference this week's TV ratings. My source that I had been getting for these Nielsen ratings
has been killed.
Well, yeah, maybe it's gone. So I have had to scramble and put together a list of what I think is. So this may not be 1000% accurate because I don't know if a lot of these are reruns, and I don't know if the ratings they're giving me are for the rerun or for the first viewing. But I imagine it plays out similar to this because it kind of looks similar. Though this is a very CBS-dominated top 10. So that was my kind of like, But I will say, during this week on television, it could still be CBS-dominated because the Democratic National Convention coverage was running all week on ABC, NBC, and CBS. Fox said, fuck that, and didn't
Why?
do it. Because they turn off at 10 o'clock and go to syndications.
Reruns of the X-Files that actually ended 2 years ago.
Yeah. So, without further ado, the number 1, according to this, is CSI on CBS with 13.5 million viewers. CSI Miami comes in number 2, 11.9 million viewers. The Amazing Race, which was actually a new episode on CBS at 10.1 million viewers. A rerun of 2.5 Men on CBS, 9.6 million. They reran 2.5 Men like multiple days.
Look at the numbers on this for reruns. This is crazy.
If the reruns are accurate, but I think that the actuals were actually higher because I'm like, 2.5 Men did more than 9.6 million on a first run, I think. So I think,
yeah, but they're not. It's summer, so they're not first run episodes,
right? Even but I don't know if the rating source I now have used.
Oh, okay.
It lists it as a rerun, but it also says the ratings, and I don't know if the ratings are for the rerun or for the first run. So
got it. Okay,
that's where my confusion is. But 60 Minutes on CBS is number 5 with 9.5 million. Number 6, Cold Case, a rerun, 9.5 million. Number 7, new to this week, Trading Spouses, Meet Your New Mommy, the Tuesday one on Fox with 9.3 million viewers. Everybody Loves Raymond, number 8 with 8.6 million viewers on CBS. And then Big Brother Tuesday and Big Brother Thursday round out with 8.8 million and 8.6 million. Those were new. Fox this week showed Nutty Professor to the Clumps on Thursday night.
Yeah, right.
Battle that Democratic convention coverage with 4.4 million views.
Battle it did.
While, if I may, this kind of goes more into news or whatever. John Kerry's the nominee that year. He comes out, he does a perfectly okay whatever speech, which starts the unofficial start of one of the more frustrating trends in Democratic politics, which is that 2008 onwards, John Kerry comes out during the convention and gives the most fiery, charismatic, no prisoners taken speech you can possibly imagine. And all of us that were there in 2004 are like, where the fuck was this guy in 2004?
Kind of like Gore after the election when he goes on his stuff. It's like, what the fuck? Like, you were pretty flat and, like.
They needed better writers.
Yeah. Right.
Anyway.
So also this week, NBC on Saturday night did the network television premiere of The Talented Mr. Ripley.
Oh, you should make us guess these. Okay, Ripley comes out. Wow, that's okay.
It's a 99 movie, and it's first airing on
wow.
television on NBC on Saturday nights. So
Did Ripley do well? Is that a hit at the box office?
Yes.
Not really.
yeah,
It is? It's a hit?
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
they got another movie, right? They did another one.
It's got a direct-to-video.
No, it wasn't a
Ripley's
Direct to
Game.
video. Okay. Oh, Ripley's
it.
Game. Yeah, I remember Ripley's Game. Okay, that's what happened.
I don't know why I always think that movie was like a mediocre, like it didn't do okay. I guess okay.
I don't know.
Was that maybe the
I mean, it
reviews
was-
were like, meh?
It was
or-
the biggie of the Christmas season by default in
The reviews at the time
1999.
were kind of like, I don't want to say mixed, but they weren't like over the top stellar. They're like,
Yeah,
yeah, Jude
it
Law-
did
Jude Law's pretty
129 million worldwide on a 40 budget.
Okay, so Christmas
is
like
great.
I forgot
Yeah.
that it's a holiday movie, so that makes sense. To me.
Yeah. And it probably did very well on DVD, as Damon implied in the Hot Wings excerpt that everybody passes around.
Right.
And he's not wrong.
Little to know, a couple months later, we'd have that puppet movie that would make him out to be like some idiot. Matt Damon.
And then Team America came out.
Yeah. Oh. So, speaking of all the politics, speaking of all the Democratic National Convention, our next movie is The Manchurian Candidate. 2004.
On July 30th, something happened to us out there on that mission, and it's not what we thought it was.
The movie event of the summer
You don't actually believe his story.
is coming.
I'm not crazy!
Somebody got into our heads. Neurons got exposed.
You swore to me that this was fail-safe.
This is rich people funding bad science to put a sleeper in the White House.
I got the proof. We can take them out. The Manchurian Candidate. Rated R. Friday, July 30th. Only in theaters.
Directed by Jonathan Demme, written by Daniel Pine and Dean Georgeris, from a 1962 screenplay by George Axelrod, based on the novel by Richard Condon, starring Denzel Washington, Liev Schreiber, Meryl Streep, John Voight, Jeffrey Wright, Anthony Mackie, Dean Stockwell, Kimberly Elise, and Roger Corman. R.I.P., sir. In the midst of the Gulf War, soldiers are kidnapped and brainwashed for a sinister purpose. And we will start with Aaron.
So this is coming off of Jonathan Demme's worst film, The Truth About Charlie, his previous remake, and he bounces back, baby. This movie's rock solid. I've always liked this movie. I've always liked it more than I anticipated liking it. I had seen Manchurian Candidate, and I thought it was a great classic film. It's one of the ones where I'm like, let me finally see this Manchurian Candidate. I rented it one night, and I saw it, and I was like, no, I didn't rent it. It was when the DVD, like the special edition DVD came out. That's why I'm like, okay, I'm finally going to see this movie. And I saw it, and I was like, this movie rocks. And so I'm like, they're going to remake it? Okay. But you said all those names, and I'm like, well, I'm not against this. As I'm typically not. I typically don't. The world doesn't end when remakes get announced. As far as I'm concerned, it's when they're bad. That's when I worry. But seeing the movie, I was like, this good. Like this is just a really solid thriller. A really good update as far as like how do you take this premise and put it into now. Like, I don't think it's the equivalent of Manchurian Candidate from 1962, but I do think it does the job really effectively. I wouldn't say this is Denzel's best performance, but if you look at him in this movie, it's a good case to make of why I think he's one of the greatest actors of all time, period. Like he's so good at playing the different sides of what Denzel can do. He does really well here, where he can play confident, he can play unhinged, he can play curious. Like he's doing a lot of work here to make this role work. And I especially like it because compared to Frank Sinatra, who's his character in the original one, it's a more complex character. He has more to do. It's about both discovery and action, where Frank Sinatra is more kind of on the sidelines, like kind of figuring out what's happening. Denzel's like very much involved in this. This is the first movie I really noticed Jeffrey Wright in. I know he's been around before, but this first one I really took notice of this specific actor, and I think he's only in this for a little bit, but he's really good in it. Liev Schreiber, I've already been liking a lot, and we mentioned Some of All Fears last week because we were talking about Born Identity. I thought he was a great John Clark in Some of All Fears, and seeing him here, it's like this is a perfect like guy you cast as kind of could be president type character. And Brandon, I think we talked about this also. The idea he would be a great Harvey Dent. Like this is the movie where I think of him as like this makes sense of him being like a Harvey Dent. He doesn't get cast in that role, but he would be good in it. I hadn't seen this since I saw it in theaters. So like, looking at this now is like, look at the cast in this. Every person is somebody. Every person in this movie is played by an actor you're aware of. And I forgot like how big the Meryl Streep performance is going to be, but she's going for it. She really like and she doesn't have to like there's not many villainous roles in Meryl's book at this point. It's like this and what like Death Becomes Her kinda. So it's like this movie, she really they really let her fly with playing not Hillary Clinton, but Cheney. Like that's like she's playing like Cheney and Condoleezza. Like
Thriller also Death Becomes Her kinda.
yeah. Connor for Real's other album.
Yes.
That Becomes Her kinda. The plot itself, I think this is a great way to update a movie like this because it makes different like it's compared to Thunderbirds, it's following like the basic plot of the original Manchurian and the book, I presume, but it's doing the right kinds of choices as far as how do you update this for now and what do you do to kind of be akin to those other things but still be your own thing. And I think it has some really interesting choices for how to do that. The ending in particular, I really, it's the kind of, and I saw this with my mom too, and there's like choices they make as far as like what kind of government conspiracies are out there, where it's like, I'm not going to say this is what's happening, but it's like, okay, they presented a semi-plausible reality for like the kinds of crazy things that could be going on behind the scenes. So no, I think this is a really solid, just a really well made, it's also like this is the guy that made Silence of the Lambs. I'm not going to say it's scary, but it has a really good sense of atmosphere. Like it really knows how to play the thriller card well. There's a couple like murder scenes that happen. You're like, that's uncomfortable. So no, this is a good movie.
Scott?
I don't want to say this is better than the original because whatever, but I really fucking like this one then and now. And I think for me, what works even better without, again, I don't want to get better best. I find this one very sad and very mournful and very moving in a way that the original picture, and this is not a criticism, it's actually, it's almost a black comedy. And that's very, it works that way. This almost plays the premise for heartbreak in a way that I find very impactful. Washington is, I agree with what you said, whether it's his best performance there, but it's like, he's so off kilter here. You never know, not even, what side he's on, but sort of like what kind of person he really is, because he doesn't really know what kind of person he really is. And there's a certain discomfort. And, Schreiber is spectacular here. He's so sad. He's so, again, I keep using the word mournful, but between this and The Omen, that is not a great movie, but when I had heard briefly he was, what was that? Yeah.
He does the job.
Yeah.
He was briefly, rumored for Harvey Dent to think, oh, this is fucking great. Now, to be fair, it's obvious that Nolan wanted someone who could play Harvey as the gee whiz, happy-go-lucky, idealistic person before he becomes Two-Face. And I think with Liev Schreiber, we'd be like, "Oh, he's sad from the get-go."
Well, if you're doing Harvey Dent in multiple movies, you go for Liev Schreiber. But if you're doing just one, Eckhart, perfect.
Yeah. But anyway, whatever. And this is, it's a 2-hour and change film where the quote unquote violence and action really doesn't happen to the last half hour. And it takes its sweet time, but the conversations, cryptic or otherwise, are incredibly engrossing. And the character interactions are incredibly impactful. The only issue I have with this film, and it's not really with the film itself, this was something that it was sort of starting to gnaw at me even then. I even wrote a piece about this in, I think, 2012 after I saw The Bourne Legacy, which is like, even then we were getting to a point where it's like, okay, if some giant conspiracy had been revealed, would anyone give a shit 72 hours later? What's the point of covering all this shit up? It would be in the news cycle for a week and we'd all talk about it on MySpace and then nobody would give a shit. And then in the same way, I wonder, then and now, if you want to do diabolical things to the US government for the US government, money works. As
Dude,
we've
to be
sadly
fair,
learned.
I don't think we ever talked about those things on MySpace. I don't think MySpace ever got to that point. It was gone.
Well, when I wrote the piece, it was 2012. It was probably like, well, it was Facebook. Yeah, Facebook. Twitter to a certain extent.
Facebook.
What was that?
The Facebook.
Yes, exactly. The Facebook. But again, that's not a knock on the movie because the movie is the movie is the movie. And in this almost aspirational world where the only way this could happen would be some sort of diabolical, brainwashing and convoluted, decades long plot.
Where John Voight is the good guy.
Yeah, where John Voight is the good guy. Thank
right.
You. As he, other than that, I think it's a terrific character thriller. I think it's aspirational in terms of taking a remake of a film that is a classic and a film that I think most people, maybe not most people walking into the movie, but most people, let's say 50-50 that actually know what the old movie is, or at least know that it exists.
They know
something.
They know the idea of the first movie, and they know the sniper type thing. That's about,
But after, in 2005, though, after the hit Tony Scott film Domino, they know a ton more about Lawrence Harvey.
Yes,
obviously. But in making a movie that completely stands on its own, that is very, very good for reasons unto itself, and can sit side by, I'll make the joke, it passes the Amazing Spider-Man test, in that, it is good enough and different enough and unique enough to be right next to it on the DVD box. And if you feel like watching the Manchurian Candidate, you can pick either or and get something very different out of your experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I think outside of its worth as a remake, it's just a really, really, really good Denzel Washington vehicle.
Yeah.
And it was sort of the prototypical, the extent that and this was sort of the start of this era where he often, but not always with Tony Scott or Anton Fuqua, were almost single-handedly keeping the R-rated, character-driven, adult-skewing action movie alive for a good decade.
Yeah. I hadn't seen this in a long time, but revisiting this, I want to, like, we're talking about like the remake and stuff. I think part of the hesitancy of like crowning this was something is like, would you say Manchurian Candidate is probably overall Frank Sinatra's best movie, or most signature?
Well, there's the big epic one,
the Golden Arm. There's
Jesus Christ,
The Singing Detective.
Keep talking.
Yeah. Okay. But I wonder if
Eternity.
okay.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So
I mean, this is the most celebrated as far as like it's a cerebral, like, I'll put it this way. it's his most celebrated film. That's not the he's not the point of celebration. He's a part of it,
Right.
But like,
yeah.
Premiere to Eternity, like he's a star in that. That's
Yeah.
key. He's key to it. That movie, Manchurian Candidate's it's more Frankenheimer is more the thing.
Right.
That movie.
So I want to say with this one, in considering a remake, this is back in the day where a remake was mainly, hey, let's modernize this. Let's modernize. That was kind of the ideal. It wasn't like the rebootish kind of thing you did. It was, well, how would this be today? Let's modernize it. And I want to say, like, this one probably I hold up, and this is massive compliment to it. It's in the vein of like William Friedkin's Sorcerer, where there's Wages of Fear and Sorcerer, and then there's that Manchurian Candidate, this one, where they can held side by side, but I'm kind of infinitely more fascinated with this one than the original, even though I like the original and this one. They're both very good movies. This one it's a bit more slick. It's because that original exists, it's very interesting to see what they do and how they take this one and how they just like add modern intensity to it with these great performances. This is stacked cast-wise, even before some people take off. Like, I mean, back here, you're probably noting Dean Stockwell and John Voight more than you are Jeffrey Wright or Anthony Mackie or anybody. And Jeffrey Wright, yeah,
Wright's key to it, but yeah, Mackie's like
this is after Shaft.
Yeah, I picked up on Wright with Shaft was a big
That's
one.
true. I did pick up.
But yeah, here, there's so many like just this movie's chock full of like delicious scenes, which in a summer political thriller, sure, those go hand in hand with it, but there's just so much like the Jeffrey Wright Denzel Washington scene is so key and great, because I think what you're talking about with Denzel's performance and the uncertainty is because you see Wright earlier, like, when's he going to turn into that guy? When's he going to turn into? Is he going to turn into that? He's starting to turn into that guy. So Wright is like the worst possible thing Denzel could be, and he sets it up so well. With what he's doing there. There's also a terrific exchange with Vera Farmiga and Liev Schreiber that's just heartbreaking early on, when he thinks when everything's supposed to be going so well for him, that he thinks everything's just going to land in his lap like it does, and it's just like, no. And then their scene later in the boat after he's murdered her father and stuff is just gut-wrenching. And this is early Farmiga too. Like, we don't know who she is yet, like, really. She'll have another couple things before, like, Running Scared, where she's like a complete lead. And then later, like, The Departed shortly after that.
Up in the Air, we got her an Oscar nomination.
Yeah, Up in the Air. Yeah. So there's that. Meryl is tremendous. This is one of the few she doesn't get nominated for an Oscar for, where you could have honestly argued she was.
This and Ricky and the Flash, both Demi movies.
Yeah, where she could have easily, because I mean, she's got moments like that with the boardroom scene.
Well, she has the whole speech at the beginning of the movie. Here's the real.
Yeah, it's so, there's so much good paranoia stuff. There's just kind of like mind fuckery when you're watching them brainwash them and do all that stuff. And Schreiber's tremendous in this movie as well. Like everybody just like, you know what, we're working with Demi, A game, right? You know, like that's,
it really feels like it.
Yeah,
like everything is for a summer release of Manchurian Candidate.
Yeah.
Like, everybody did the job. That's what I was just thinking about, like, watching it the week ago or so. I was just sitting there being like in awe of the fact that everyone's there doing a thing, and there's so much like talent, and like you have the Tak Fukumoto cinematography, so like, here we go, people staring directly at me and stuff. It's just it has the right, just everything that you could have done to do another Manchurian Candidate. The right choices were made.
Well, yeah, and they're coming at a time where, like, this is some commentary on Bush as well. Coming in this time, I mean, we're in an election year where the guy's up for re-election, and you're releasing a movie where the guy is just a puppet being dangled with, these his mother's extremism and everything else behind not some company, not big oil, but like other things going on here, which freaking Mike Novick from 24 with hair. Interesting to see. And
that was a double take.
And it's also like, it makes me laugh, because there's a lot of actors and character actors in this that appear that I'm just like, they play government people and other things all the time. I'm like, is there just like a little troop of you guys that get hired? Like, you guys want the guys from the West Wing, or do you want the 24 people? You want the 24? Okay, we'll bring them in on this. Let's have this happen. But
Divide
no,
up between this and Bourne. Let's see
yeah.
who picks.
I remember when I saw this movie, like back when it first came out, or so, I might have seen it. I think we might have did the Blu-ray or HD DVD on it when we were doing testing, Scott, back in the day. And I was like, oh, that's okay. But now watching this now, this hits harder, better, and I'm really like big on this movie after this. And no slight on the original, which I just recently watched because it came on 4K not too long ago. That's a good movie too. But this just like, I don't know, this was like the added element that first movie had limitations where it couldn't do, or, you know, the passage of time and film evolution allow this movie to be what it is. But this is the idea of like being inspired by a previous film and doing something rather than just picking it up and remaking it. You know, like this was like, I watched this film. I have so many ideas right now. I want to do this rather than, all right, we're going to remake this year. We're going to do a Manchurian Candidate. We're going to, you know, someone really wanted this, and if you just feel it throughout.
To speak to the original film, and I'll lead back to this, I swear. What's key about the Frankenheimer version is it's in this early 60s zone where we're entering New Hollywood, but we're not quite there. And that's the movie that Frankenheimer is a director who can put intensity and visceralness on screen, but like at that point in time, you can only do so much. And that's a movie that's testing those bounds, because there are very blunt murder scenes in that film. There's things that are, you can deem them experimental because filmmakers aren't making, especially big Hollywood films, aren't going to the extremes that film does at that time. So it stands out within the context of the films around it, for sure, all of just being a really well-made, well-done movie. This movie has to contend with the fact that a week ago, a PG-13 Bourne movie has people getting murdered horrendously. Like, there's stuff that's, you know, not unique going on anymore as far as how hardcore can you go with this. And it pulls it off. It does things that are, frankly, body horror when it comes to the idea of chips in arms and surgeries and skulls and shit. Like, it's going for, like, okay, if we're going to go for a movie about brainwashing and government conspiracies, let's make that movie. The guy from Silence of the Lambs is going to make that movie, and it delivers. Like, it has the means of, yes, updating this properly, but also getting into the kind of intensity that, yeah, for the time in the 60s, Frankenheimer was also aiming for, and it's doing it what the 04 approximation would be.
Yeah, absolutely.
The one, and this is only in hindsight, and this is not the movie's fault because this was 12 years later, but watching it this time, you know, seeing Meryl Streep do her "What if Hillary was evil" shtick, it was fun in 2004, but again, the thing I always wondered, to what extent was having a bunch of YA fantasy films in the mid to 2010s where the big twist was that the real villain was the blonde lady all along. I don't think that helped in the run-up to the 2016 election. And granted, this film was in 2004, but that's less fun to watch because of that.
Okay.
I mean, they were prepping the Hillary stuff since the 90s.
Yeah.
Like, she was painted a villain since then. It was funny because I was watching this and I was really getting into it and being like, wow. And I'm like, I wonder if these two are going to think as highly of this movie as I am. Because I was just really like, I didn't know if I was just like hitting me in I watched it in the right mood, the right time. But I come here, I'm like, okay, I'm not crazy. This was a really good take on it.
And I can't emphasize how bad the charade remake, The Truth About Charlie, is.
Right.
It's just, by default, it has to be better.
Right.
Remember when they were like, Mark Wahlberg should be Cary Grant, and the world was like, no. And they were all agreed on this and said, never again.
They did the same thing with Ben Affleck and Paycheck, because that's what John Woo says all over the commentary. He's like, Cary Grant. World said, no, not him.
Or John.
Not him. So, very cool. Very cool. Well, yeah, man, just seek it out. It's on Max. If you folks have Max,
but
watch
Kino's got a kick-ass 4K of it. So
they do. Yeah. So, yeah, check out Check it out. So now we'll move on from there to the Ryan Seacrest Weekly Top 40.
American Top 40 with Ryan Seacrest. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. American Top 40.
So we'll start from the 10 with entering the number 10, Dip It Low by Christina Milian. Number 9, On Fire by Lloyd Banks. Number 8, Turn Me On, Kevin Little featuring Spragga Benz. Dropping 3 spots to number 7, The Reason by Hooba Stank. And staying at number 6, Move Your Body by Nina Sky. Number 5, If I Ain't Got You by Alicia Keys stay the same. Lean Back by Terror Squad jumps up to number 4, basically swapping with Hooba Stank. And 3, 2, 1 continues to be Usher's Burn, Slow Motion by Juvenile, and number 1, Confessions Part 2 by Usher. Summer of Usher. Can't get away from him. Guy was still a treasure.
Oh, I forgot. Speaking of music, because I did mention this, the Harold and Kumar. It has Black Eyed Peas, the other artist of the summer in my eyes.
Yeah.
And it has the original version of Let's Get It Started.
Does. It does have that. I forgot to mention that. I meant to talk about that. That's when they were like, it's when he comes home and Kumar is listening to it, and I'm like, hey, that's the one that's not started.
Yeah. Lose control, body and soul.
All right, so let's move on to a group that wasn't listening to any music here. In M. Night Shyamalan's The Village.
From writer-director M. Night Shyamalan.
We have always had a gentle understanding with the creatures who live beyond our borders.
There are marks on the door. Nothing can prepare you for what lies just outside the village.
Never enter the woods. That is where they wait.
M. Night Shyamalan's The Village.
Do your very best not to scream.
This is directed, of course, by M. Night Shyamalan. Also written by M. Night Shyamalan, with a cameo by M. Night Shyamalan, starring Sigourney Weaver, William Hurt, Joaquin Phoenix, Bryce Dallas Howard, Adrian Brody, Brendan Gleeson, Cherry Jones, Judy Greer, Jesse Eisenberg, Franz Katz, Michael Pitt, and Jane Atkinson. Shot by Roger the Goat Deakins. A series of events test the belief of a small, isolated countryside village. I'm going to start The Village here because I like this movie. I understand this is a turning point with people where they started to question M. Night Shyamalan's abilities as a filmmaker. I really enjoyed it. I was sunk into this movie. And a lot of people, and I wrote an article about this in my early blogging days on Naptown Nerd. I was the turn of this movie, the twist, as they call it, surprised me because, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, you shouldn't see it coming a mile away." No, it's obvious. No, because I'm a film geek. I was reading production news and stuff from this movie and reading about how the cast of this movie went to like a 19th century boot camp, like 1800s. To learn how to live in this, be accurate, and all this stuff. And that was a big component in the pre-production of this movie and talking about the authenticity of it. So when I watched this movie, I heard some dialogue that I was like, that's kind of weird. I thought some questionable writing with some words and phrases used in this movie, like dumpster and alley. I was like, okay, whatever. And then when the reveal happened, I was quite like, oh wow, okay, cool, blah, blah, blah. And I also thought the way they revealed it was super haunting. I always stuck with me. The picture of them in front of the clinic or whatever was like creepy as hell to me. I think this movie looks gorgeous. Shot the colonial stuff shot really well. I think all the performance. This is a nice breakout for Bryce Dallas Howard was a standout. Lots of character actors. Like I didn't remember Jesse Eisenberg being that kid in the movie. I like remember that character, but I'm like, oh, that's Jesse Eisenberg. Adrian Brody's quite good in it. There's some the chase at the end is excellent in the woods. This movie is just really effective. And it's mystery. Some of the scenes of hiding, a lot of the drama going on in the village between people. Hurt's really good. William Hurt's good. And this is actually, I was realizing this time, this is M. Night Shyamalan's first time working with like a real ensemble cast. His movies before this had been limited to a finite amount of people in the main cast, and this is him working with a bigger cast with a lot of people. But I still enjoy The Village. I'm not too cool for it. Shyamalan was 4 for 4 with me after this movie. I appreciate it still. I still like the twist on it. Interesting concept. Things really work for me. So yeah, I still am a fan of The Village. It's probably the weakest of his first 3 or his first 4, but it still came through for me. So, who wants it next?
Well, for me,
okay.
I like and respect this film. Obviously it was then and now intended as a parable for how we, a post 9/11 parable in terms of just sort of burying your head in the sand and not dealing with the real world as it is, blah, blah, blah. Things were better back then, blah, blah, blah. And I think as a parable, it's very compelling. I think once the first reveal, about halfway through the movie, that they're, sorry, we're going to spoil The Village here.
Yep. Time to spoil The Village, which is not available on streaming or Blu-ray. It's only in, huh? You have to rent it. Yeah, you have to rent it. So.
Oh no, $4. That there are no monsters, that it was a fiction, a farce, as William Hurt says. It's a good idea and it makes sense. But for me, the film loses some of its tension when you realize that the primary threat isn't such. And then after the second reveal, where it's, this is all in the real, the modern world, yada, 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 which I had heard rumblings about it, but it didn't, whatever. It's the way it was put together, the way it was revealed still worked for me in that sense. I think it's a choice to have it revealed as comically as it is. And I think that's maybe on the first viewing is a little off-putting, especially, if, in the way that Shyamalan, obviously his movies are often very funny, but that is the kind of sequence that's usually played for high drama, and it's played for a certain amount of farce. But once we know that there are no monsters and they're living in the modern day, to me, and again, I don't want to script watch here, but why not send any adult in that village that knows the way of the world to get that medicine?
Because you can prove someone else goes out there and she'll never know because she can't see anything or do anything. So she's safe and she can continue to spread the belief of stuff out there. Like, so that's
that's benefit. Fair. It's sort of like, that's a hell of a risk considering she's blind.
Yeah.
But anyway, the least realistic thing, the part where the movie very briefly loses me completely, it's toward the beginning, where a character is requested the hand in marriage by Judy Greer, and that character says no thank you.
I was thinking about that myself. But Bryce Dallas Howard is a very good consolation.
This movie's lost me.
Bryce Dallas Howard is a very good consolation. So
no, she's terrific in this picture. I'm just being a jerk. Again, I think I admire what the film's going for more than I think it's one of his least entertaining films, especially when you know where it's going, because to a certain extent it is a put on. I like the actors are terrific. William Hurt, he can do this. He can do this in his sleep. Adrian Brody is wide awake, shall we say?
Hello.
And
this is post Oscar, right? He won his Oscar.
Yeah, very much post Oscar.
Yeah. And again, I don't know whether he wanted to do Pulp Fiction because that's just where his choices lied, or whether because he was a unconventionally handsome Jewish guy that maybe wasn't getting the same kind of post-Oscar glory offers that a Jude Law might get. I don't know. But he's very good here. The score is gorgeous. This is one of those fun examples of a film that was more or less universally panned and still got an Oscar nomination, in this case for its score, and absolutely deserved. And I do think this is the film that, for better or worse, sort of set the stereotype as Shyamalan always does the goofy twist. Because obviously Sixth Sense comes out. Unbreakable doesn't really have a, I mean, it kind of has a twist, but not really, but it's close enough to people that, you know, will say yes. And then Signs does not have one. And I think if he had made something, if he had switched this and Lady in the Water around, perhaps that reputation would not have stuck. Because of course, Lady in the Water is a pretty conventional.
That one was sold on not having one. That's what they did. But Signs does have one, but it's very light.
Yeah, it's sort of like, oh, that's neat.
This
it's
is
like,
how
I wouldn't say, you know, it's like the reveal at the end of The Gift. It's like, I guess it's a twist, but not really. The Kate Blanchett gift, not the Jason Bateman. But yeah, this was sort of the start of Shyamalan spending some time in the dark, wandering in the wilderness, shall we say, for a good 11 years, honestly, until the visit.
Well, he
which,
leaves.
Ironically, I think it's one of his very best films.
He leaves Buena Vista after this one, right?
Yeah. And we can debate both then and now, you know, how they were received then versus and how they hold up now for Lady in the Water and The Happening and After Earth. Last Airbender is every bit as bad as his reputation. In fact, in retrospect, you know, I'm the guy that's always bitching about why don't you make franchises based on stuff that kids today actually like. I wonder if the Last Airbender is the reason they don't.
Yeah, I think after this he's gonna stick it to Buena Vista. Here's the movie I'm gonna, and he's a little too high on himself for Lady in the Water, and then The Happening is like, oh, can't do this again. Like he's trying to go back to his well, not too well. The Last Airbender is what it is After Earth, and then finally when he's knocked back all the way down, because remember they had that elevator movie. Devil.
Yes.
And it started with M. Night Shyamalan Presents, and I remember hearing people groan in the theater when that trailer.
People were laughing.
They removed his name from it. And,
I threw popcorn at them, but they were laughing.
Yeah. And then it isn't until he finally did The Visit, where he does a super low budget, that he starts building himself back and building his audience back.
And even in, yes, it's found footage, so there's a certain, but even like the first 5 minutes of that movie, the character interactions and the dialogue, like, God, I've missed this. This is what has been missing since, I would argue, Signs.
And now he's got one of my most hyped movies for this current summer. He's built back to that.
I'm probably overhyping myself, but if it works, if Trap works on its premise as popcorn flying fun, it's its most skewing movie since Split.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a corker of a elevator pitch, and this is the 25th anniversary of The Sixth Sense. And I think you're going to have a lot of positive goodwill pointed in his direction. Maybe not his daughter's, but we'll see.
So we're going to get Glass 4.
Oh, right, Brandon, don't even say that.
Rebreakable.
I can't do.
Split with 3 eyes.
Oh God!
With 4 eyes.
Stop it.
In that that we definitely know the name of.
Or you know what? He'll go the Split. He'll be the Beetlejuice route. It'll be split, 4 times, and it'll be four McAvoys.
We could talk M. Night Shyamalan for an entire podcast, and maybe we should closer to when Trap opens.
Hey, Split, but like McAvoy thinks he's Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson. And everybody, he's all of them.
Definitely be Samuel L. Jackson.
I want to see it. Yep. He's gonna be all of them. And he has a scene where he's Robin Wright and Bruce Willis, because she won't come back. So,
But yeah, I mean, in a vacuum, this is an interesting, incredibly ambitious movie from a point where Shyamalan can do whatever the fuck he wants.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the movie that opens to $50 million entirely on his name. Because, I mean, it's got one of the great teaser trailers of the last 20 years or so, where the entire punchline is, fuck, it's a new Light Shyamalan movie. And I
That was the red band one. Said fuck.
No, that was the happening where it's like, this movie's got gore and fuck words and boobs and violence. It's his first R-rated movie. Ugh. You're really missing a lot when you don't watch the video version of this.
And it's one of the best comedies of the summer.
Yes. But anyway, good.
Anyway.
I don't love it, but I appreciate the hell out of what it's trying to do. And I wish more filmmakers' bad movies were this good.
All right, Aaron.
I saw this with my mom. We were fans of the breakout three. It's not his first three, but his breakout three films: Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, and Signs. Even Signs was one where, I mean, it made $200 million. You know, it was a big hit, but it was one that was getting debates as well, as far as, you know, it was water. That's easy, like that kind of stupid conversation. I like Signs a lot, and that was it was the end of me and Mel Gibson. But
well,
you were Mel Gibson eating the dinner.
Yeah, honestly, yes. Like, and that's a whole other conversation, but like that really is like the ending point of me and Mel Gibson as a team, not counting Apocalypto for different reasons. So walking into this one, it's a new M. Night Shyamalan movie. It had a lot of attractive elements in it, as far as, you know, the casting and the idea and the teaser trailer, and the regular trailer, you know, just like into this. I would love to say that this fourth time that I've watched it now, I'm like, yeah, Team Village. I'm just not. I don't like this movie. I like The Happening more than this movie, actually, if you want to really break it down.
Me too.
It's funnier. But no, the various issues I have of it, being high on himself, I think is a good way to put it. I do think it's a very over-directed film. It's of his films that have twists in them, it's the one that feels the most reliant on it to prove how clever he is, and I don't like that. As Scott will correctly point out, The Sixth Sense, the twist is like, that's fine, but the movie's just a damn good character study / horror film. The fact that it has a twist is like, that's nice also. And, you know, obviously it didn't hurt the film's success, but it just works. This one, it feels very reliant on the fact that it's hiding something from you and you're going to learn what that is eventually. And the problem I have with that, beyond other issues that I also have, is I don't think the twist is very good. I think it makes the internal logic of the film fall apart entirely. And I don't think it's very clever. Part of that's because there's, as you said, 2 reveals. And when I get the first reveal, my only thought is, there's no way people of this time period could make elaborate costumes with makeup designs to make those faces. It doesn't. So like, I'm sitting there the whole time thinking, so the monsters aren't real. Okay. How do they make this? Like, my mind is, and I'm not a guy that guesses twists. I don't try to sit there and figure things out. I like watching a movie unfold to me, but because I wasn't really enjoying the movie, my mind was running circles when I was watching it. And so it felt deflated by the time we get to that midpoint. On top of all of these things, you talked about this ensemble cast. The problem I have is that it's an ensemble cast made up of people that are all the same down, dreary people, with the exception of Bryce Dallas Howard and a very terrible Adrien Brody, who's terrible in this movie. I think he should be arrested. I think he's really bad at this. Joaquin Phoenix, who was fantastic in Signs, I think is really dour and sad in this in a way that I don't like. The best thing this movie does is do a bait and switch by basically killing him halfway through. He doesn't die, but you know what I mean. Basically taking him out of the pit halfway through and just saying, this is actually Bryce Dallas Howard's story.
Yeah, you don't realize that. Yeah, till then.
That's a good turn. And it's also a relief for me because I'm like, the guy I really liked in Signs is not divided here. But Bryce Dallas Howard is very good. No question that. Fun side story, my friend Scooter saw this movie, didn't realize she was blind until after he finished the movie and people told him that she was blind. How that works, I don't know, but that that's how his brain functions. Shout out to Scooter. But
Who walks waving a stick like that? Stupid.
Don't worry, I've questioned about this years on end. But she's good in this movie. Hurt's good in this movie as far as it's William Hurt. He knows what he's doing in this kind of thing, and he seems more awake than he did in Lost in Space as far as lead roles in summer movies go. So it's like he's got the William Hurt thing going for him here. But Weaver, Gleason, Celia Roth, like they're all just the same person, just spread across each other. And I get why, because they're all like sad people that lost somebody in a murder or whatever.
It's a movie about sad bastards. Come on.
It is, but the movie, it also doesn't reckon with any of that in any way. It just says we're gonna keep doing this thing. I'm not against the idea of that, but I wish it had more meat to it. If you're gonna, if you're gonna keep burying our heads in the sand, like do something more of that. It reminded me of Stepford Wives in that way, as far as that movie does try to like redo the world. I'm not saying that Bryce Dallas Howard needed to just really burn down the village and do her own thing. But it seems like there's a piece missing, is like what to do next with all this. It looks good. Deakins is doing his job. It sounds great. What's it, Newman? Or who is it? Who's the score on or James Newman Howard? Who's doing the job here? Like, aesthetically, yes, it's Shyamalan, despite the fact that again, I think there's one too many choices being made at any time, which kind of ruins some of the horror tension that he goes for early on. It feels over directed, but it still looks nice. Like they built a village, so whatever, it looks good. They used the money well. But yeah, it was hard for me to walk out of this and be like, did I not like this? I like this guy. What's going on here? And the lady in the water made it worse the next year.
So that's the one where I was like, okay.
But that was this one. I'm still, I'm not off the train of M. Night Shyamalan. I'm just thinking, not that good. I don't hate this movie. I just don't like it. But like, I was like, okay, swing and a miss for me. The following 2 years later, Lady in the Water happens. I'm like, oh boy, this is woo. If I don't understand his cameo in this one, why he needs to like shade it in mirrors and shit. I'm like, just show your face. I don't need your reflection. Like whatever, dude. It seems so obnoxious in a way to be like hiding yourself so cleverly when it's like, I don't care that it's you. Like that's fine. Lady in the Water is like, I'm gonna save the world.
I'm the most important writer.
I'm gonna say
I will slightly defend that, because the character and the movie are very aware that the cruel irony is he only becomes a prophet or whatever because he is murdered, and that sort of gives his writings an elevated stature.
No, you can't do that and have the film critic character being like murdering him. He's the one that does get murdered. The film critic.
Yeah, that was dumb.
That said, Paul Giamatti is so good in the last 5 minutes of like,
yeah.
But that's that movie. Whatever. We're not doing a retrospective. That's for whatever other show. Village, yeah. I every time, I let this at this point. I think I love giving movies chances. I love when I rewatch something, especially things like. I love the idea of sitting down with it thinking this is the time that it's going to work.
Yeah, no, I same way. Yeah.
Like there's never a part of me that's like write it off forever, doesn't count anymore. If I'm
every time I watch Hannibal.
If I honestly, yes, that's another.
Yeah. Well, Aaron,
the second act is so good that I think, oh wait, like, oh, there we go. Yeah, yep.
Well, we recently had a discussion because Barbarella is like that for me, where like you recently liked it a lot, and I'm like, man, that's a movie I've constantly gone back to, and I'm like, this time's gonna be the time it click, and it just doesn't for some reason for me. And it's got a lot of Brandon checklist things, and it just doesn't.
There's various
every time I watch Spider-Man 2
into it, and it just doesn't work for like it's like, oh, maybe Quantum really will work as a fifth act.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I mean, there are certainly good elements in this film. I am not beyond seeing the stuff that works well in The Village. And it's certainly not me trying to be too cool for it. I just didn't like it. I still don't. I think it's a misfire for him.
Gotcha. Well, Scott, did America like it?
For a couple days.
Box office wise?
It opened to a weekend box office, yada, yada, yada. The Village opened to $50.7 million, which was one of the biggest openings ever for a wholly original live action picture. Yeah. In fact, going through it might still be in the top 10 or 15. I'll have to do the math. However, honestly, in retrospect, audiences didn't like it that much more than critics did, because it topped out at $114 million, which means it barely doubled its opening weekend. It made a robust $242 million overseas for a $257 million global gross on a $60 million budget. So it was a huge hit. Which,
what did Signs do?
And again, what was that?
What did Signs do?
Signs did 400 and change.
That had a movie.
I think that was partially the faith-based audience, and that's not a criticism, but I do think that's part of why the film was so damn leggy in North America, is that it did play to a certain extent to the faith-based crowd, while also working as a non-denominational religious.
It has more marketable elements overall. So,
yeah.
This is like, here's Joaquin Phoenix. We see a star yet? Don't know. I don't know.
Because Lady in the Water was really his first. In fact, in terms of horror movies, that's still his only flop. If you want to call it a horror movie, that's debatable. And that's partially why I think Shyamalan has endured. Because as bad as The Last Airbender was, very few people saw The Last Airbender because they wanted to see the new M. Night Shyamalan picture.
Right.
So to a certain extent, he kind of got away with that one.
Well, After Earth is a Will Smith movie.
That was a Will Smith movie, and they did not advertise Shyamalan.
They hid the fact.
Yeah,
I argued then and now that it was a stupid idea.
The thing
that would have made it stand out in the crowd.
The thing that I credit with Shyamalan is that he is a non-white director that's gotten multiple chances to.
And
that's how strong The Sixth Sense was. That's honestly what it.
Yeah.
He keeps getting eternal credit in the same way
when you make a $50 million drama about a kid with a mood disorder and it gets a bunch of Oscar nominations and grosses $700 million, you got a hall pass for life.
Yeah.
That's
a lot. You get a lot of credit for being able to keep pulling that off in the way that, lesser directors that made poorer films keep getting chances. The fact that,
and that's the thing is when people, even now, now it's even more annoying because he tends to I don't know if he's self-funding at Warner Brothers. I need to look into that. But obviously, everything he was doing with Blumhouse and/or Universal, he was self-funding that. So it's like he's giving himself the second chance here. It's not like Hollywood keeps opening their door to him.
Yeah.
But anyway, Born Supremacy. I'm sorry. Born Supremacy would drop 54% in weekend 2, a sharper drop than I'd expect. But again, The Village, also aiming at older teens / adults, just opened to $51 million. It would make $24 million. It would have 99 million over 10 days, and it would top out at 176 domestic, 290 worldwide on a $75 million budget. I mean, at number 3, but still making $20 million is The Manchurian Candidate, which Denzel for a while was in the 20 million zone.
Yeah.
Stuff like this, Training Day, John Q.
Out of Time?
I think it was 17, but close enough. Even Remember the Titans, I think they did like $22 million in 2000. But when the movie's cheap enough, which this was not, frankly. Oh, and Taking Bellam 1, 2, 3, which did open with 25 in 2009. Unfortunately, this film costs $80 million, and it only made like 95 worldwide. So it was not a hit. Now, did it make up for it in the glory days of DVD? I don't know.
Probably.
But yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
It's got Denzel. It's gonna.
I mean, it's certainly a proto TNT Sunday afternoon watch.
Yeah.
Because while it is R-rated, and this is neither criticism nor compliment, it's stuff you can cut around. The big murder scene is a bloodless drowning. Anyway, number 4, I, Robot, making $10.5 million, 52%, 115 million over 17 days. Number 5, Spider-Man 2, dropping 42%, earning $8.6 million for a $344 million domestic total. Number 6, Catwoman, $6.4 million, dropping 61%, which, especially back then, was a pretty hearty drop. It would make 29 and change after 10 days. It would top out at $40 million.
And no female-led superhero movies would ever be made again.
Well, Elektra.
Oh.
They got one more chance. Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle did not open well, earning $5.2 million in its opening weekend. I think this is a classic example of, and this, honestly, this tends to happen a lot when you have movies that have sneak previews, because you go to see this movie and like, wow, I am so surprised that this movie is good. But then when you talk to people about it for the next week, and I'm thinking The Rundown, White House Down, Harold and Kumar, probably a couple others I'm forgetting, where you're like, you say, oh, I saw The Rundown. They're like, that's not, no, it's really good. But no, it's really good generally means that people aren't going to show up of their own accord.
That trailer,
because
I'm
sorry?
Trailer is bad. That is my main issue with Harold and Kumar. I am not surprised that it wasn't a hit, because I think it's a bad trailer to sell that movie.
Wait, what movie?
Harold and Kumar.
Oh, well, you're wrong, but that's okay. Anyway, 5.
Oh yeah, people showed up, right, because of how good that trailer was.
Well, I'm thinking bad. It's a bad movie. It's a good movie.
No, he was talking about
Christ.
He was talking about the
I'm
trailer.
sorry. Yeah, the trailer was mediocre at best. Yes, I apologize. I agree with you. I'll be honest. I saw that sneak preview and I had very little recollection of the trailer, so I went into it relatively fresh. 18.2 by the end, $24 million on a 9 budget. This is one that it's a modest theatrical success, but it does do very well on DVD.
An unrated version.
The unrated.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I watched the unrated version. I could not tell you what was different offhand. Anyway, so again, for the people in the back, yes, films that don't do super duper in theaters can become popular in DVD, but if they are not successful, at least in terms of rate of return in theaters, it is not a new franchise. Anyway, in case you care, Escape from Guantanamo Bay would make $38 million and then $44 million on a 12 budget worldwide. They both made about $5 million overseas. And then A Very Harold and Kumar Christmas, $19 million budget, would make 35 domestic, 1.1 million overseas, and then 36 million worldwide.
The 3D craze didn't go over for that one, I guess.
Yes.
Neil Patrick Harris not so big overseas.
And thus ended the saga of Harold and Kumar. Cinderella Story, minus 37% in weekend 3, 4.8 million, $40 million in 17 days. Anchorman sticking around after 4 weekends, 3.1 million, minus 55, 78 after 24 days. Fahrenheit 9/11 would make $3.1 million. Ironically, the weekend of the Democratic National Convention, dropping just 35%, despite losing 600 screens. It would make $109 million by the end of its 6th weekend.
Where's Thunderbirds?
Number 11.
Thunderbirds is in 11th place. I'm getting there. I apologize. $2.76 million. Fucking awful.
Did it get to 10?
Sorry, no, it will not. 6.9 million.
Oh.
28 million worldwide on a $57 million budget.
You know how many marionette puppets you could buy for that?
Ask Trey Parker.
Look up the budget of Teen America. That'll tell you. So yeah, even let me look something up really quick. I have hold on a second. I want to see something. 100 and...
The Thunderbirds.
No, this is not Thunderbirds related.
I'm talking while you're doing things to distract you.
Oh.
Clearly, America was like, no, thank you. And we benefited from that.
Even Fahrenheit 9/11, a film that we think of as being relatively leggy, a long, leggy summer hit that did unprecedented business for a documentary, it still did 92% of its business by the end of its 6th weekend. And I bring that up because a lot of the conversation about VOD, PVOD, shorter windows, obviously it's very complicated, but the math still stands most movies, even the ones we think of as leggy, did between 85 and 5% of their money in the first by the end of the 6 weekend of release. Anyway.
Okay.
Acting like there's an outside scoop button in the side of the windows here or something.
It was last week. You're saying you didn't read it? Hold on a second. Hold on a second.
What?
You're getting the Thomas stare.
I'm gonna get some.
Okay.
This visual joke's gonna be great for the podcast.
Yeah. And the amount of time we're sitting here. Google.com.
I'm gonna change shirts.
Thomas. Nope. Delete Thomas.
Shit, where is it?
Right. While Scott looks that up, Aaron, where can people keep up with you on the interwebs?
You can find me hosting my podcast, Out and Out there and Abe. I co-host it with my friend Abe. We talk about weekly movie releases. We also do fun commentary tracks with other good, cool stuff in between episodes. I am the editor-in-chief over at We Live Entertainment. My movie reviews can be found there. I write Blu-ray and Criterion reviews over at Why So Blue. I'm on all the socials at Aaron's PS4, and everything I do can be found on my personal Substack page, thecodofzeke.substack.com.
All right, Scott?
Outside Scoop, and then pucknews.com. God damn it, I'm going to find this face.
All right.
Much easier to find.
Okay. Well,
Scott Mendelson's at that. Brandon, do you want to go?
Yeah. So I'm on social media and Letterboxd. You know, that one too. At Brandon4KUHD. PopCon Louisville is coming up in just a couple weeks, August 24th through 26th at the Louisville Convention Center in Louisville, Kentucky. I hope I have a full slate of podcast stage podcasts to perform, but if I don't, sign up popcon.us if you have podcast you like to perform. Perform in front of Anson Mount from Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Next week, Aaron. There we go.
That was worth it.
Oh, wow. The Thomas the Train. He's disapproving.
Oh, you found the thing that your Snyder fans throw at you all the time?
Okay. Oh, and that's the kind ones.
That's usually easier to find.
Aaron. Yo, homie. Next week on The Open Water, we take the little black book for collateral to find out why she hate me. All that and more as the summer of 2004 at 20 continues. Yo, homie.
The summer of 2004.